Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Well, as we all know, the Nintendo Switch is doing very well. It's shut up a lot of the skeptics, well, the more biased ones anyway. And this Saturday will mark the system's 1-year anniversary. As for its game library, I think it's a pretty solid lineup thus far. I mean, there's some new titles and a bunch of ports, which most of the ports I either already own or I don't really have any interest in. But the new games, a lot of them look pretty cool. Like, I was like, oh, okay, I gotta check that one out. Speaking of new games, I want to talk about Labo real quick before I get into the 4 game ideas I have for the Switch, which is the main. Now, Labo, first of all, the release date I think is kind of funny or ironic. 4/20. Anyway, Labo, I highly doubt that I will personally buy it, but I do think it's kind of a neat idea because, well, I feel like it'll make a great family project, and it'll probably get kids to use their imagination a lot more, which I feel like you don't see too much of that nowadays, which is kind of sad. And that's the thing, maybe it's just my inner child talking, but I've talked about this before. I've always had a very strong imagination, and I come from a very creative family. In fact, that's why it's the whole cardboard thing is like, even though I'm like, Labo, whatever, but the cardboard thing, it's different, that's for sure, but, there's nothing wrong with being different, but I think it just kind of reminds me of my personal childhood, because I remember, God, I used to take, like, cardboard boxes and make forts for G.I. Joes, and, hey, it's free, technically, rather than buying, like $100 on, like, a huge G.I. Joe piece or something, and it comes from your own imagination. And I remember the episode of Rugrats titled The Box, when they have the big cardboard box and they each say it is something different. And then at one point, I think it's actually towards the end of the episode, Dee Dee asks Stu, she's like, don't you remember your first box? And he's like, oh yeah, it was an old shoe box. I made it into a submarine. I was like, when I was a kid, I was like, that's a great idea. And I ended up doing that. And then another time, I'll never forget this. My brother, him and I, were huge Star Wars fans growing up. Still are, actually. He took a whole bunch of cardboard and made this huge Star Wars AT-AT. It was probably like at least 2 feet tall and 3 inches long. And it was really well done. It looked cool and everything, but it took up a big chunk of our room. So, but that's just kind of the idea of like the imagination I was talking about and stuff. And a lot of the hate towards Labo, which it's understandable, but some of it is, I find more funny than anything. I remember one person said that, like, anybody who's excited about this should be ashamed of themselves. And this was the type of person who will spends their day looking at the whole comment section of a single YouTube video, like, writing different comments, replying to other people and stuff, and yet you're shaming people? Yeah. And I understand that, well, the thing is, a lot of this, the main target audience for Labo is obviously kids, like little kids, but, full-grown adults are going to play it too, but the whole kids thing, like, the fact that it's for kids, I understand that parents are the ones who are going to have to buy it for them, except for maybe the more biased types, which are like, oh, I'm not buying that for my kid because it's stupid. Like, wow. It reminds me of that Ronald guy that I talked about in my Trolls video that I did for Halloween, where he said that if he couldn't find a SNES Classic Edition, he wouldn't buy his kids a Switch. So what you're saying is basically, you're not going to buy something that your kids might want just because Nintendo will hurt your ego. This is the kind of person who walks into a convenience store and won't give their kid a quarter for the gumball machine, but then they'll spend like $50 on scratch tickets. Anywho, getting on to today's topic, I have a few ideas of games that I would love to see made for the Switch, even if these don't necessarily happen. Just because I want to see it happen doesn't mean it will, but hey, I'm just throwing the ideas out there, or putting it out there, so, who knows, if it spreads around, maybe developers will see it and say like, yeah, it's not a bad idea, actually, maybe we should look into that. But anyway, first is a Star Fox spin-off game, like Star Wars Battlefront 2, that the 6th gen one, not the butchered EA one. But it would be like, instead of like clones versus stormtroopers, clones versus droids, or stormtroopers versus the rebels, it would be like the Cornerian army, which would be the dogs, and then the Venom army would be the monkeys. Each side has like, a sniper, a heavy weapons guy, a technical guy, and stuff. And then if, say you're playing as the Cornerian army, and you get a certain amount of points, then you play as Fox, or Peppy, or, Cat, or Bill, whoever. And then when you're playing as the Venom army, and you get a certain number of points, you play as, like, Wolf or somebody, you know what I mean? Maybe they could even just make up characters for it, and then, of course, you'd have the space battles, where you, like, try and extend a certain amount of damage to the enemy's giant ship or something. And because, much like in Star Wars Battlefront 2, where you have the vehicles you could drive, they could do that with Star Fox, a game like this. Star Fox has a bunch, well, not a shit ton of vehicles, but they have quite a few. Yeah. Moving on to the second idea. This is one that actually a number of people have talked about. It's a Mario Kart game, but with all Nintendo's IPs. In other words, not just like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe or anything like that, but it would be like a Mario Kart game that would have just a handful of Mario Kart characters, and then you'd have like Link and Samus, and Kirby, and etc., Captain Falcon, etc., and then you could have like an item or two from each game. Like, for example, let's say they could have Link's hook shot as an item, and it could be like when somebody's in front of you, you could shoot it at them and it pulls them back. Or imagine a Pokeball in a racing game. Like, that would be amazing. And I think, like I said, I think a lot of people, because people have actually made videos on this idea, now that I think of it. And I know it's like some people don't like the idea. Some people like the idea, some people don't, which is kind of funny. Like, you'll see people complain about the fact that there's F-Zero levels in Mario Kart 8, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, or they complain that Link is in there and stuff, and it's just like, why? Like, that's something I don't get about gamers. Not just like Mario, but any genre, anything in general. It's like, people complain when something doesn't change, but then when it does change, they still complain. I don't get it. I don't get it. But let's move on to the third idea. Amiibos have been on the market for like 3.5 years, but even I know they're fun to collect. A lot of people, because that's the thing. I felt like the popularity of them would kind of die out over time. They kind of just fade into obscurity, so to speak. Like, but no, they're still selling like hotcakes. Nintendo's still making a lot of money off of them. Probably because of collectors and stuff. I mean, I just buy one every once in a blue one. Like, oh, I like this character. That one looks kind of cool, or whatever. But the thing with Amiibos is, especially being on the market for 3.5 years, that really all they do is unlock bonus content in games. And then there was an app, if you will, on the Wii U, where it's like, you use the Amiibos to basically unlock like a little... It would unlock like a demo of a retro Nintendo game for like NES or Super Nintendo or something. But other than that, Amiibos don't really do much. They really need to give them their own game, like a dungeon crawler or like a adventure game. Or if they made a game like the Subspace Emissary that it was like just that, and you use like the Amiibos, like you scan them into the game to play as them, I'd buy that in a heartbeat, because the Subspace Emissary was my favorite part of Smash Bros. Brawl. I know some people didn't really like it. I thought it was awesome. I've talked about that before, but but yes, they really need to give Amiibos their own game, and that's the thing. They wouldn't even necessarily have to make a whole portal device like Skylanders, because Amiibos, you can already scan it into like the controller, basically, like the gamepad or the Joy-Con or whatever. So, coming to my last idea, this one goes out to everyone who grew up in the 90s or remembers the Bit Wars, or the 16-bit wars, to be more specific. You know those Mario vs. Sonic Olympic sports games, I never really got into them. I mean, I played a demo of one at Target, and I was like, oh, this is actually kind of fun, but I was like, I don't know, I feel like they should do more. What I would love to see them do, even if, like, it's up both companies to do it or whatever, would be a Sega versus Nintendo fighting game, the same style as Marvel vs. Capcom. And I know there's Smash Brothers, but Smash Brothers is, well, it's mostly Nintendo IPs. In fact, it's pretty much all Nintendo IPs. And then you have Sonic and, like, other third-party characters, but, this, if they did, like, something like this, like Sega versus Nintendo, it would be like, you'd have characters from Mario, characters from Sonic, Shining Force, Metroid, Zelda, Streets of Rage, the list goes on. And the other thing is, Smash Brothers, it doesn't really have that tag team element, you know what I mean, where it's like, you pick 3 characters and have them, like, switch them up as you're fighting, like, I don't even know if anybody's ever thought of this idea before. I'm sure they probably have. That's why I'm almost shocked that this hasn't become a game yet. So, those are just some ideas for games that I would like to see come to the Switch. Not that, even if they don't, but just, like I said, just throwing it out there. If any developers catch wind of this or something, that would be awesome if they decide to make the game. So, yeah, that's about all, I guess. So, until next time, thanks for watching, everybody. Have a nice day.